It's Ash from SuperVideos, back for another in-depth review of an episode of The Last of Us. This is my review of Season 1, Episode 5. Overall, I think this episode has to be my favorite episode so far. A lot of great moments, a lot of devastating moments, a lot of great action, which I absolutely enjoyed. So if you're just looking for a short review, I absolutely loved this episode. But if you want a full review, stay tuned. We'll be right back with my in-depth review. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. Now, I've noticed that my in-depth review videos don't do as good as other ones, my regular videos, so I will try to make my reviews shorter, and if needed, I'll make smaller videos just to talk more in depth about specific stuff that I want to talk about from each of the episodes. So with that, let's get right into it. First, I really enjoyed the intro of this episode with them showing a flashback of the celebration that was taking place, the hunters celebrating the fact that they had taken over from the Fedra. I thought that was great, and I absolutely loved how it showed the brutality that this group brings. They showed someone getting hanged, someone getting shot, and we saw a pretty horrific scene at the beginning with the knives going through the body of a Fedra soldier. And all of this was great because it was not just the audience witnessing this, but Henry and Sam were witnessing this. So early on, they really planted the seed of really getting us to think that the hunters are the bad guys and Henry and Sam are the good guys, which is true for the most part, but this definitely contradicted the main reveal that came later, which we're going to talk about. But I did also absolutely love the fact that they brought the doctor back and actually revealed that, you know, he was lying and he was really covering for Henry and Sam. I really loved that, and it really shines a bit of light into what type of character that person was. And I thought that that was great. I also absolutely loved the moments between Henry and Sam. More so than the game, they really dived into the relationship between the brothers. And I absolutely loved what they did with the brothers and, you know, how they made us care about these two brothers and their relationship in a short amount of time. So that was awesome. I think the video game did it just as well, but it took it longer to do that, which makes sense. It's a different medium. It's a lot easier to do that on a TV show than a video game, but I absolutely loved what they did. And I absolutely loved the setup that they did and everything that they kind of build up as far as Sam's death with him getting painted at the beginning. That was the start of it, the red paint around his eyes. For those of you that want to know more about my thoughts about that, I did a separate video on that already. You can go check it out. But I absolutely loved the early build-up that they did for Sam's death. And obviously, I really loved the Easter egg that they did right in the episode, because this scene right here with Sam getting painted was directly related to a scene that we saw later where we saw a red reflection on Henry's eyes or face in the same exact place where Sam's paint was. So I thought that that was a great callback, a great Easter egg. Now, as far as this scene where we saw a different perspective from the events that took place in the previous episode, I really enjoyed that. We got to see Henry witnessing the truck ambush that we saw in the previous episode. Ellie and Joel were attacked by the Hunter gang. So I really enjoyed the fact that they brought that back and showed us a different perspective. It wasn't overdone. It was done just right. And I absolutely love the fact that they put a subtle thing in there where Joel might have seen Henry, but we don't know for sure. But we definitely know Henry saw Joel. But other than that, let's talk a little bit about Kathleen and Perry and the Hunters. I actually really enjoyed that scene with Kathleen and Perry in the jail cell when they were looking at the prisoners of war, really their neighbors who she thinks ratted on them, but I really love what they did there. Some of the dialogue was clunky, but for the most part, I really loved it. And there was one part of it that I really, really enjoyed, which was Kathleen says, "You're informants, so inform." I thought that was great dialogue that they added in there. And, it had a little bit of comedic themes to it, but at the same time, it really showed what type of character she was. But other than that, not much more to say about that particular scene. I mean, it was a great scene, but not much more to break down, really. And like I said, some of it was slightly clunky, like the way that Kathleen delivered the dialogue. But the other thing I want to talk about is the scene that directly connected to the cliffhanger of the previous episode, where Henry and Sam basically put Ellie and Joel at gunpoint. Now, one thing I want to say right off the bat, the scene where Henry tells Sam to walk slower so they don't walk over the glass, that really goes against the setup that they did in the previous episode. Because in the previous episode, we as the audience look at Joel doing that, putting the glass in front of the door and think, that's really, really smart. And that's a clever way to be alert. And then in the next episode, they just completely undermine that whole cleverness. And they basically show that it didn't really matter. You know what I mean? So I didn't really like that. I think that they could have done that a little different. They could have had them go through a different door that they know about, that Joel and Ellie may not have known about, or something like that. That might have added a bit more complexity to it and made it a bit better. But I really, really loved the whole back and forth interaction between Joel and Ellie and Sam and Henry there when they were talking and Joel and Ellie were at gunpoint. Really, really loved the fact that Ellie said, "Joel just has an asshole voice." I thought that was funny. I really enjoyed that particular interaction. Looking at the scene where they were making the plan, I really liked that whole scene as well. I mean, it was dragged a little too much, but I really loved it. And I loved the setup that they did. Well, two setups. One, when they actually had Henry reveal that he did in fact rat on the neighbors and he was an informant for the Fedra. That reveal was great. Looking at Joel's reaction to that was also shocking, but also very interesting. So I loved that. And I absolutely loved the fact that they put that setup in there about the infected being underground. I thought that that was great setup that they definitely came back to at the end of the episode. And it was something that they set up even in the previous episode with the floor that was basically caving in. Now let's talk a little bit about them going to the tunnels. I really loved the whole thing with them in the tunnels. I mean, the fact that the tunnels were actually something that we saw in the game, but we didn't really know too much about it. We learned a little bit about it through letters and stuff like that, but they dived a little deeper into that in the episode. We learned a little bit about what could have happened, which is obviously the story about Ish in the video game that we learned through letters. I thought that was great. The whole atmosphere that we saw with the daycare location in the tunnels was great. I really loved that. Loved the interaction between Ellie and Sam here. I thought that was great. Then we get to the point where Joel and Henry actually talk about what happened with Henry in the past. And this is where Henry reveals that Sam was sick and, he had to basically sell Michael to the Fedra. Michael, obviously Kathleen's brother, the original leader of the Hunters. And he did that obviously in order to get the medicine that Sam needed. I really loved that. And I loved the kind of questions that were raised as far as, so does that mean Henry is the bad guy or is he a good guy? I love the contradiction. I love that they made us question what we actually know and question morality and what's good and what's bad. I really like that. And I absolutely loved how this sort of contradicted and called back to what happened earlier, which I talked about a little bit, with showing the Hunters as being these evil people, and then for the audience early on thinking that Sam and Henry are actually good people. Well, particularly Henry, not Sam. But then later on we realized that he did in fact do the things that the Hunters said that he did, but maybe he had a good reason for it. You know what I mean? So I absolutely loved all of those things and how it came together. And I loved the fact that they had Kathleen talk to Perry about Michael, and we got a little bit of background in terms of what that whole situation was like. I really liked that. Now, one thing that I didn't really like, that scene particularly with Kathleen and Perry, I didn't really like the fact that they didn't dive into one piece of dialogue. They just said it, but maybe it would have been better to dive deeper and maybe even show it. And that line or dialogue that I'm talking about is when Perry said, "Your brother Michael was a great man. We loved him, but he didn't change anything. You changed things. And because of that, we're going to follow you to the end." Something like that. And like I said, I would have loved to actually see that, because just hearing it isn't enough. We should have gotten a little bit more as far as why that was the case and kind of visually see what made Kathleen so special. But then the next thing I want to talk about is the ending of the episode, the final chapter, I would say, of this episode, which started with the group, Joel, Ellie, Henry, and Sam, walking in the middle of the streets, thinking that they're safe. Now, one thing, this is crap. I mean, it doesn't make sense. This is still near the city. They should be careful. I mean, it's reckless and unrealistic for them to be just walking in the middle of the road. So that was a little bit of WTF moment for me. But I really like the fact that they did the exact same sniper ambush scene from the game. It was done slightly differently, but I really like the way they did it. And I love the fact that this all kind of connected to the setup that they did earlier with the infected being underground and all of that. But the other thing I do want to talk about is the actual sniper that was there. In the game, we got this action, great fight sequence between the sniper and Joel, but we didn't see that. They cut it all out, which I was disappointed about. Everything was great up to that point, and even after this point, but they completely ignored and skipped the fact that there was this great fight sequence in the game with the sniper and Joel, and they just skipped over it. Worst, they actually made it less significant because they had this great scene that, again, brought the question of what's good, what's bad, morality and all of that, with Joel asking the old sniper dude to not do anything and not get shot, but he did it anyway and got shot. They skipped it. I mean, they cut the kill, which just takes away from the impact of that scene and how powerful it could have been. So I thought that that was crap, and I just don't know why they're doing that. I mean, it's not the first time. They've cut several important scenes where it was a kill scene. They cut it, like they cut in the middle so we don't see the kill. So I'm getting a little annoyed at that, and that's a little disappointing. I mean, we know why they're doing that, because they're toning down on the violence, but some of the kills are necessary. I mean, I get it that they shouldn't go out John Wick on us, but this was necessary. This was one of the scenes that was necessary to see. But I absolutely loved the way that Joel was screaming, run in the background when he saw the trucks coming in, the hunters' trucks. And, you know, just one thing, in the game, it worked the same way. The sniper was actually talking to the hunters who attacked, so that was done the same way. But I really, really loved what they did there, and I loved, and again, loved how Joel shot the guy in the truck, which led to the explosion and all of that. So that was great. And I loved how Kathleen and Perry and the other hunters rolled in like a boss. That was all great. Now, one thing I want to say, and this is another negative, I didn't like the fact that they had this opportunity for Kathleen to kill Henry, but they didn't do it. I mean, we know why. They were going to follow the game story as far as his story is concerned. But why would you put this in here where we have Kathleen with a gun pointed towards Henry? She could take the shot, but she doesn't. She hesitates for whatever reason until obviously the truck goes down and the infected come up. I thought that was very, very unrealistic. I mean, we should have at least got a little bit of back and forth and something where Henry's trying to make Kathleen question her morality, and maybe that's what is causing her to hesitate. But they didn't really do that. They just had her wait for no reason. So I thought that was disappointing. But with that out of the way, the rest is mostly positives. I mean, I absolutely loved the way that the infected rolled in. I loved how they came in. I mean, it was like a scene straight out of World War C and other horror movies. So I absolutely loved it. I loved the fact that they had Joel kind of in the background killing the infected and the clickers that were rolling in. I thought that that was great. And I loved that that was dynamic. Like, it wasn't just back and forth scenes with just the characters. They made it dynamic. The way they made it dynamic was they had these shots where you could see Ellie in the middle running and you could see Joel taking a shot, and it was just like a dynamic scene that I absolutely enjoyed. I really, really loved it. Now, with that said, let's talk a little bit about this clicker, the clicker girl with the Blue's Clues t-shirt. I loved it. I mean, I loved the contradiction of innocence and horror. That was great. And I loved the fact that they brought the clicker back later. I thought that was great. Here, with Kathleen pointing the gun to Henry, Joel, Sam, and Ellie, and the clicker in the background. Now, this is another thing. This is the second time when she could have taken the shot, and they didn't do that. So it just bothers me that they didn't do something more realistic. Like, it's mind-boggling why they would even put this in here. They could have done something where it's not as easy as just taking a shot. You know what I mean? But I loved how the clicker attacks and kills Kathleen. I thought that was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. The clicker killed Kathleen the way that I wanted someone to kill Kathleen, because she was getting really on my nerves. But this was great. And, you know, just seeing all of the infected and clickers in the background was fantastic. Now, I haven't forgotten about the bloater. I just wanted to talk about the bloater at the end, but I really loved the bloater. I mean, the bloater rolling in like a boss. Fantastic. I freaking loved it. And I loved the fact that they actually had Perry, Kathleen's right-hand man, go out like a boss. Being killed by the boss of the bosses of the monsters, the bloater. Now, as great as it was, and it was great that we saw an actual kill, like a type of kill that we see in the game where you lose to a bloater and it kills you. What I didn't like is how far away it was. I mean, we barely saw it. It was great with the head getting ripped out and everything. Visually, the horror aspect of it was fantastic, but it was just too far away. It would have been better to see it closer. And maybe I understand why they did it, because they wanted us to see the expression on Kathleen's face at the same time as that whole thing was happening. But still, I think that we should probably have gotten a closer look how the bloater kind of killed Perry, a very capable guy, a pretty strong guy. So I think that that was a missed opportunity, the fact that they didn't do that. But let's talk a little bit about the devastating scene of this episode, the reveal that Sam was actually bit. I really liked the way that all came together. In the game, it was done differently, but I really liked how in the TV show, they had these messages going back and forth between Ellie and Sam. I loved the way they handled that. And I loved the fact that they put this message: if you turn into a monster, is it still you inside? I thought that that was a great way to actually reveal that he was infected. I mean, it was subtle. You may not get it right away, and that's the beauty of it, but I loved the way that they did it. And I loved the bite that we see. It was great. Loved the back and forth between Sam and Ellie, with her revealing her bite and saying that my blood is medicine. All of that. Fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And obviously, the scene where in the morning she goes to get Sam's attention, but then she realizes that he's turned. It was great. I loved it. And obviously, we have this kind of fight breaking out with Ellie and the infected Sam, which I thought was great. Loved the reaction from everyone else. Loved Joel and Henry's reaction to this. It was just like how they reacted to it in the game. So I absolutely loved it. And it obviously all led to Henry putting the gun to his own head and killing himself. Now, I loved the way they did it. In the game, it was slightly different. I mean, it was the same thing, but they let the scene breathe a bit more. In the game, they didn't really do that in the TV show. They rushed it slightly, but again, the emotional impact was there. It was emotionally charged. It was a devastating scene. So everything was just phenomenal. And I loved how they ended this episode with Joel and Ellie at the grave. And I absolutely love how Ellie put the message on the chalkboard or whatever it was and put it on the grave, which said, "I'm sorry to Sam." I thought that that was pretty devastating, very heartfelt, and pretty emotional. So I absolutely loved it. But that's pretty much it. That's my review. As far as a rating for this episode, at this point, I'm probably going to go with 9 out of 10. Actually, maybe 9.5 out of 10. And like I said, there were a few things that I didn't like, but overall, I really, really enjoyed it. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm intrigued to know your review. So share your thoughts and opinions and review in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press that bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.